Hey artists, happy 2026. This year is going to be another year of mini watercolors for me. 2025 got me hooked and we're going to keep going in the minis. I'm going to help you today with a couple of hints on what I've learned about minis, different than mediums or larger. I think part of the reason I love minis so much is that when I first started painting professionally, I did larger canvases and also murals, sometimes two-story murals up on scaffolding. I have a fear of heights. I'd be dropping paint down the wall. There's something just about a larger scale it's kind of intimidating, fun when you're done and step back, but there's something about minis that just feel, well, less risk. Number one, you're not going to fall off a scaffold painting this, but also just adorable, like adorable cuteness, really, quite honestly, let's be honest. So we're going to talk about that. I want to help you guys if you also love minis. Plus, a lot of my tutorials are doing minis, so I want you to be able to follow along and not get frustrated. We are going to talk about some things like paper texture, front versus back. We're going to talk about water control, brush sizes, overall subjects that you use, and how you're sketching them up, and how the initial sketch and the pencil, the marks you're making will affect that. So grab your mini paper. Grab some mini brushes. You don't even need super mini brushes, but join me for a lot of cool things this year in minis. But let's first dive in, no pun intended, to see what some tips are that will really help you make your minis maximally fabulous.
Okay, when you think about going mini, obviously you've got less real estate on your page. So you want to really plan out what would be a good subject. You can paint anything you can paint on a huge mural as a mini, of course, but what is going to be easier as far as detail? You want to simplify in watercolor anyway, but you definitely want to simplify here. Get a single subject animal. You can do some background, but don't put, like, this is a birch tree. Don't put little bugs on the birch tree, do all sorts of detail. Just get the basics. You can do landscape scenes, of course. You just want, here's one of the Ensenada, Mexico coast. You just want to simplify it enough. You could do this on 12 by 12 too, but you'll see I'm not adding a lot of rocks. There aren't people here on the beach. We're not surfing. There's no fish jumping out of the ocean. It's just kind of the scene itself. Here's an example of doing almost a little too much in this scene on a mini. I love it. This was a super challenge to me, but if you're framing this or doing something, you're not going to be seeing all this detail. It's very cool and it's fun to be able to do, but you want it to be able to translate while even seeing it. This one works because I kept the color palette pretty simply the same. I'm using really a basic 3 primary colors on this one. And that works as well. Look at your palette and make sure you've got kind of harmonious colors or it's going to be kind of chaotic. Here's one when I was really just starting out a little bit earlier this summer. These are 2 from a local brewery. You can go and grab the beer and drink it outside. They have live music. But this one is very cool, a lot going on. But I almost like this simple one better, even though watercolory, it's not the best technique. It's just because it just kind of tells a more serene, simple story. This has a lot going on. See, you guys decide though. There's a lot you can do with composition alone. Okay, once you planned out your composition, what you're going to do, you really should sketch it out. You can do freehand, you can do really loose, easy background watercolor, abstract for sure. But to get proportions and stuff right, you definitely want to sketch it on here, but not just any old way. Don't use, this is similar for larger watercolor, but it's super important for mini. Don't use like charcoal, something that's going to be smudgy. Let's see what happens if we do our little turtle with this. And then, we go to erase it or we go to put some water on it later, and that's just going to spread around too much and it's going to leave some black marks behind. We don't want that. You don't want any bleedable pen, of course, but just taking a simple number 2 pencil or a hard graphite and getting your sketch in there. And then, okay, guys, our third one is the actual texture of the paper itself. Most watercolor papers I have are 140 cold press, have a more textured side on the cold press papers and a less textured side. They're still both amazing, but I'm going to tell you, I would say, I've been doing this, is do the less textured side for your minis. It depending on what you're going for, but it really sometimes can be a little distracting with the more textured side when you're doing in minis, although it's totally fabulous when you're doing other things or larger. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say we're going to do like a dry brush technique and make some waves. So let's do that on the on the, I need to get some more, a little more water on the texture. Okay, so we're doing that on the textured and it's looking awesome. We're leaving some space in there and you can see that what that texture is doing. Let's do it on the smooth. We're still able to do it, but we're not necessarily going to get in the small square area that we have as much. You see, like I still want to show a little texture there, so I would even do a little more. But you see what I mean? This, you can do the technique, but you're a little bit more in control of where that texture is. I'm still doing a little dry brushing around there. You see, and so if it's a small painting and we're doing a little ocean scene, that could take over and be a little much. It's amazing texture and it's a really good idea, but it may be a little much for the small. Now let's take a look at doing something smooth like an orange, something like that. Let's just draw one in. Let's just do a little orange. Pretend we're doing that. And the texture is awesome. We've got all that going on and that's great. But if we're going to do the orange on a really small bit down here, it might be too much texture. Let's show that with the same brush, but I'm going to do it as a smaller. And it might just be a little distracting. We'll see how that goes when it dries a little bit. But if we're looking to get a little bit more detail and a little less texture on purpose, down here, if we're doing that, it's going to be smoother for us. And you can do wet on wet down here. You can do different techniques. We can still drop in darker. We can do still our little shading, highlighting, and stuff like that. We can do it here, but it might just be too textured for a mini. It depends. You guys experiment and see what you like. But you guys can see if we're doing it these smaller or larger sizes on smooth, it's just straight smoother. And you can do some washes and layering. You can layer your washes on top of each other to create these different textures, the different layers, and you're in a little bit more control on the smooth. Let's see, I have a couple that dried earlier. Similar, you can see sort of the same kind of thing. These are already dry, so you can see this as it dried. There's rougher texture here. It's not always a bad thing, of course, but if it's in a smaller area, you might not love it. I'll bring that up closer so you guys can see. I mean, I like it. I love the more texture, the better, but just something to think about. Okay, last but not least, coming up. Okay, the obvious, this is going to be brush size, brush control, and water control all in one. This is our number 4. I want you guys, obviously people are going to realize, super smart, that you use a smaller brush for a smaller painting, but it's not all that obvious. You don't have to go out and buy all new brushes. You can use your number 4. I only use a 4 and a 6, and occasionally a 2 on my minis, and you can do that on the bigger as well. You don't really have to have these crazy, look at this, what the heck? These are 18/0 and 20/0. Don't need that, but you could. And look at this one. You see when it gets frayed like this one on the left? It's not as effective. Daughter borrowed it and did it. It's okay. It was for her boyfriend's family. She did amazing artworks for them, so I guess it's worth it. But you guys can't fray up your brushes and have them be a good point. But these can create, I did a little snowman for snow globe and I did the carrot nose on the snowman with one of these. Otherwise, I couldn't have done it. But look, I can do all my minis with these too. Just use them on the tip. Okay, and so we talked about size, so let's talk about water and brush control. As long as you're in control, you can hold the brush back here and kind of take longer strokes when you're back at a canvas or when you're using a bigger thing. And then when we're up closer, you want to be holding it down here. But let's look at this in relation to the turtle scales I was showing you guys earlier. So for those, let's take a look at this. Okay, so for the first scale, what would be a larger size painting? I have wet the background, and I'm going to do wet on wet, and I'm also going to do wet on wet here, see what happens, and then we're going to do one wet on dry. Okay, so let's see what happens. So when I'm in wet on wet on a larger space, you have a lot of freedom and a lot of sort of time and liberty to go kind of nutty. Do what you want to do, put in, drop in. We're making like a tortoiseshell color. So I'm just dropping in a ton of color. letting it go. We can still come back and do another layer, but even just to get this first layer in, just like if you're doing a sky or anything else, we're just pretty much at liberty to do all this. It's going to blend. Look at how it's just going to blend together. It's doing its thing. We can drop in a pretty good bit of pigment, and it's pretty quickly going together and seeping into the paper because the paper is already wet, so it's sopping it up. It's going to look super cool when it dries. Okay, I'm going to use the same brush. I'm using a 6, so this is to prove to you that you can do a larger brush, even smaller. So, but what my best friend right now is having a paper towel, because that's gonna help you with brush control. You're gonna dab it off a lot more when you're doing super dirty, when you're doing a smaller one. So I dabbed it in the water. I'm then dabbing it on my towel so it's not super crazy wet. Then let's go get some of these same colors and do the same, but I'm just not dropping in as much. See, my water control and my brush control, I'm holding it at the tip, is a lot more important than it was up here. We could go crazy. Down here, obviously smaller. So see, we're doing our thing. We're still tapping in and doing stuff. It's still absorbing into the paper pretty quickly, but even more quickly. So it's kind of, you just kind of don't have as much time. So you kind of have to think ahead a little bit more when you're doing the minis. There's not as much room to fix any kind of stuff. You got to go with the flow a little bit more. Let's say we wanted a little darker over here. I'm trying to keep it around the same tones. See, so we've got that. It's already blending in together. Now let's try wet on dry. So same thing. I have to get a little bit more color here. I lost some. But we are going to do it, but our paper is already dry underneath. It's not pre-wet. So let's try it. What it's going to do, what I think it's going to do, let's see if it does it the way that I think, that I'm hoping, is it keeps our colors kind of discreet in one area. They'll still have water and they're still balling up a little bit, but they're balling up kind of in their own discrete places. See, it's not going into the paper quite as quickly, right? So we've got little dabs here. There's a whole dot. And then let's say we got a little dot of this reddish color. We got that all over here. It's its own thing. They will blend if we touch them. If we touch the edges together. Let's do a little dab of yellow so you can see the difference between all this. So here we go. We've got this there. Now look, I kind of want those to blend a little bit, but I have time to think about it on wet on dry. See, I can say, all right, it didn't just already happen like it did up here. Okay, I'm going to touch that together a little. Perfect. Let's see that. And then I want to add a little more brown or whatever, and I can do that in here. And then it can start to happen for me. But it's still kind of discreet. You couldn't see the difference. It is still going to blend, especially on their edges, and there's going to be some cool stuff going on, but it didn't happen so quickly. You have some more time to do it. It's just that the pigment stays a little bit obviously darker and richer when you're doing wet on dry. So a lot of times I do, but you can do the background. Like for this guy, background definitely did wet on wet, and then these wet on dry. So I have more control. Still did a lot of cool blending. You guys have to watch my tutorial for sea turtles. Have so much fun. Super fun to do and super easy. So watch that when it's up. Hope you guys are as obsessed with minis as I am. Join me. I'm going to do a bunch of them this year. Just love them. I like to give them as gifts. I like to give them as free art Friday. I like to frame them. I like to keep them in this. I have this little photo album. And look at this. I can just store them all in here. All the ones that I don't really need for whatever practice just started, they're all in here. We can keep our little stuff, all tons of just get a thing with sleeves, a photo album with sleeves. You have a place to store them. Okay, guys, have so much fun. Can't wait to see you with your minis. We should have a mini meetup. Let's have a mini meetup in Austin. See you there.